And good afternoon, folks. My name is Warp103, and we have another tank in the assembly shop. So basically, it's 6 months in. So sit back and relax, and of course, enjoy the show.
I'm gonna have to rain down a godly firestorm on you.
And thank you for viewing this video. If you like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel by clicking the icon above, and then of course hitting the bell icon to get notifications when the next video drops. Okay. So here we go. The Companzer, basically 07PE. Yeah. 6 months in, another similar shop, another way for them to drain all your resources. So basically you have to spend that cash because you usually don't have it for an exclusive tank. Now, we've had a history of these and everything else of that. The 780, you know, there's a bunch of these things that's already came out, and I have all of them. And I want you to notice we had the Lion, and you notice that in game, these tanks are rarely seen. Why? Because most of the time, they just ain't that good. I mean, seriously, if you're comparing them to tech tree tanks, usually the tech tree tanks is better. Oh, but Warp, you're the one that complains all the time that, you know, board gaming spending, you know, doing the most with the tanks that are overpowered. Okay. There's a thing called being overpowered, and there's a thing called being underpowered. And these tanks, again, if they were comparable to your standard tanks, great. Meaning the standard meta tanks. I'm not talking about the regular tanks. If they're comparable to the meta tanks, great. But when they're way below the meta tanks, there's a problem. Okay. So let's look at the stats. Now, when you look at the stats and everything else, so that again, I got up against the 780, the Super Conqueror E5. So DPM is below the Super Conqueror in the E5. That's number one, is already a no. When your DPM is lower and everything else, so that oh, but the standard penetration is better. Okay, yes, the standard penetration is better. But if you actually had looked at the goal rounds, meaning that how powerful the goal rounds are, you'll see that all the other ones have a better goal round penetration than this one. And at tier 10, guess what you're shooting most of the time? Yeah, that's right, goal rounds. Because when you're facing other tier 10s, this ain't gonna cut it. So again, standard rounds, yay, you're not gonna spend a lot of money versus tier 8s. Versus tier 10s, you're gonna get full wax. Okay, cool. Shell velocity is great. Again, one of the fastest shell velocities. So if you need to hit stuff at distance, you can actually do it. Or mid range, you can actually do it. Gun handling, it's pretty good until you start looking at the Super Conquerors and E5's ability to snapshot. You know, the almighty thing that most people do. Again, I don't do it and everything else like that, but most people actually do this. They actually snapshot a lot. This tank is okay at it. You know, it's better than this god awful thing, but it's not perfect. Okay. Then you come to the almighty, what most people look at is the gun depression. 8 degrees of gun depression is not a bad thing, but it doesn't come close to the Super Conqueror, and it just matches the E5. Again, the 780, yeah, we already talked about how bad I thought this tank was to begin with when it first started, but everybody said, "Oh, Warp, you don't know what you're talking about. We love it." Okay, and again, you don't see it. Speed, it has it. Power weight ratio is a little bit lower instead of, but overall speed is, you know, pretty good and everything else of that. That's because the terrain resistance is basically matches the E5. So again, you notice I'm comparing a lot to the E5 and the Super Conqueror. Again, then when you look at the terrain resistance versus the Super Conqueror, not so much. So overall, so that you still can make the tank work with speed ride. Throw a turbo on it, you're gonna be golden. Then when you come to the armor is where the problem really starts. What's this? 290 for the turret. Well, that's not all the way. When I show you the live model and everything else, that if word is facing and everything, that you'll be like, oh, 290 for the turret. Again, the tank that I don't like can at least bounce some shots. The Super Conqueror, again, can bounce some shots. The E5 can bounce some shots. And plus how the tank works and everything else of that. So armor-wise, what we're going to come back to in a second, so that you can see that this is where the problem really lies at. Because again, they're saying that it's actually a heavy tank. It's not. It's a medium tank. They just bulked it up, but it's still a medium tank. And then you're going to look at the camo value and everything else of that, which is good. Radio range, we don't really care about and everything else of that. But again, these two here are tech tree tanks. You literally can get them for cheap. You ain't got to spend no money to get it. This is going to cost you all your resources, and if you ain't got resources, this is going to cost you real money. So again, this ain't matching up to this. Well, why do you say that? Here we go. All right. Now notice I have this up against the tier 8 Renee. It can shoot you in the here, it can pin here. We're not talking about this part here and everything else, because we already know you want to be hold down. Okay, but let's say you're side scraping, right? Uh-oh. Oh, but Warp scripts would be hauled down. Most times you can't hold down inside. You can go hold down and everything else of that. But I'm gonna show you a little trick. This whole section back here, your engine deck, again, when you're trying to side scrape, let's try to put this back to being level. When you're looking at your enemy and everything else of that, and look how much of that engine deck is exposed. Easy shots to it. So if you're trying to side scrape, you're going to get pinned in the engine deck every time. You can get pinned right here, again, most of the time. And again, this is a tier 8 that can pin you. Now, let's say if you're wiggling your turret and everything else of that, you're doing the wiggle dance and everything else of that, and you're trying to keep from not hitting your cupola. Well, guess what happens? If you over wiggle and everything else of that, you basically can get slapped right in that cheek. Okay, but Warp, go hold down. Okay. We're gonna go hold down. Why is there a section behind the gun or next to the gun that you literally can penetrate easily? I mean, just look. You hold down. Again, you only have 8 degrees. Yeah, still pinnable. Now again, this is versus a Renee. I'm not even doing tier 10s. So if a tier 8 can penetrate you virtually any place, so that unless you're specifically hold down, if you're side scraping, he's gonna pin you, you know, normally right to the face. He can pin you here, you know, unless you really positions about side scraping and everything else. And again, cupola, still pinnable. Back, still pinnable. Your face, still pinnable. There's a section right here that's pinnable. Again, when you see the live model, all you have to do is, there you go. You see where the grate is. You aim just below the grate. Grate, just below it while you're side scraping. And guess what? Pinnable. So you're like, oh, I see the thing right here. They're great. Let me just aim a little bit below it. Pin every time. Cry every time. How do I know this? Because I've been in other tier 8 tanks like that and have already come up against this, and guess what? Shot it right there and pinned it every time, and trust me, the guy was crying. The guy was crying. So, is this worth the all that's cracked up to be? The answer is no. I mean, seriously, again, this is for versus the Renee. What happens if I do any tier 10? Let's just grab. Well, we're gonna go grab a normal tank. So we're gonna go back to just the visual. Sorry, go back to the lock model. And again, that's standard rounds. Yeah. I'm not even, if we change this to the high performance rounds where most people are going to be shooting, let's be real here. I mean, right to the face, right below the gun. Well, the warp, you go hold that. You still a pinnable. Even at hold down, you're still pinnable. It's a lower chance, but it's still over 52% chance. Still, is it worth it? Nope. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Again, the armor model is worse than the 780. This has a better gun than the 780. So you're trading basically a better gun for virtually no armor. And I said virtually. I know in situations where people are like, oh, but the armor is good. Versus, again, I showed the tier 8. So versus tier 10s, you're going to get whack-a-mole. Just whacked. Whoosh. So is it worth the goal or worth all your resources to get this tank? Absolutely not. And it's the same thing I said for the 780. The Lion was at least the Lion was better. It's a medium tank. If they did this as a medium, then you're comparing it to mediums. It would be good. But compared to heavies that you're supposed to be facing with this, good luck. This is Warp103 saying warp out, have fun. We'll catch you guys on the next.